Introducing the reigning, defending, Inside Fighting host, ROBBY Sid Clark.
This is Anthony. Thank you so much for coming to the show. He is, for those who don't know, a 60-fight veteran. He's got 17 fights in the UFC, and he's coming off a 3-fight win streak, perennial contender in the division. Anthony, thank you for coming.
Man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Now, we are 2 months out from your impressive performance over Ryan Spann. And, I know you've called out Ratchik, and wanted to know if that was in the works or what the next move for Anthony Smith is right now.
I don't know, man. This game is so political at times, especially when you're at the top of a division. So I'm kind of out of commission right now. So unfortunately, I kind of feel like the guy that's kind of left out in the cold. I probably can't start a training camp for another 8 weeks. So right now I'm just focused on trying to get healthy, doing my PT stuff, and kind of just focus on that direction. I would imagine that Rakic is going to fight before I get an opportunity to book a fight. I believe Thiago Santos and Magomed Ankalaev are matched up. Yuri Prohaska is fighting for the title. So unfortunately, I think that kind of leaves me out in the cold. Yeah.
Well, I guess, with those coming up as well, too, probably the first quarter of 2022. So you think a return around April then is realistic?
Yeah.
Or what do you...
Yeah. I would guess April. I can't imagine to be any later than May. And I don't want to wait that long. So the sooner I can get back in there, the better.
Definitely. Now we'll switch gears a bit. I know you've been working, like we just mentioned, as an analyst on ESPN, and clearly you have a great mind for the sport. How has that experience helped you or changed the way that you look at the fight game?
Man, it's been a wild ride. I never had any aspirations to be on the broadcasting side at all. That was never the plan. That never even entered my mind. As I was kind of coming up in the game. It kind of just fell in my lap, and I always noticed that on my media days, they were always longer, I always had a lot more people at them. And this was, obviously pre-COVID, when it wasn't kind of locked down in a room, and then, one fighter went in at a time, and then you just answer all the media questions at once. Typically they would set us in a room, like all the fighters would be in a big room. We'd have this big thing with our name on it, and then the media members would come to us. So I always noticed that I always had a lot more people than anyone else. And that's kind of where it spiraled. I guess I was just, I don't know how to even say it. Like, this was good with my words, and I did a better job of explaining things, I think. But I never suspected it was going to actually help my fighting game, like the fighting part of it. I was always like, oh, this might be something cool to do when I'm done. But it's not very often that fighters break down fights that have nothing to do with them. So, like we always watch fights. We always, just enjoy them. But breaking down two opponents that are completely unattached to you, it's not a guy that you're ever going to fight. It's not a guy that you have fought. You're never going to be in the octagon with either one of these guys. It changes how you look at it. Typically when I watch a fight, it's how could I beat that guy, or what would I do to that guy? When I'm working the desk, it's how can fighter A beat fighter B with his skill set. So it's different. It definitely, I don't know, man, it made me realize like how good some of these guys actually are, kind of what they bring to the table. Like, I never realized it, but there's a lot of super talented people in the UFC, and unfortunately, I think a lot of them don't get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, I mean, with such a fast evolving sport too, you're absolutely right. I'm going to touch on that later. Just being, the fact that you're so young for the experience you have as well too. You've seen so many changes throughout mixed martial arts since you started, right? So I guess you would say, yeah, you feel it has kind of helped you because it just gives you, I guess, more eyes and more really study time for the sport, you would say, or?
Yeah, watching other guys that do things that I don't do and things that I'd never have to deal with it just opens up your mind. So like a perfect example is when TJ Dillashaw fought Corey Sandhagen. Fantastic fight. But breaking down like the things that make Corey Sandhagen different makes you realize like it almost like in your own brain, you have this skill set, right? And so you have this wheelhouse of things that you go to. When you're breaking down all these guys that do things differently, and they attack things differently, their mindset is different, their approaches to the same technique that I do. If you watch 100 fighters, you'll see 60 different ways that people get to that technique. I only use 2. So like now I have 60 new ways to try in the gym. Like, I seen Corey Sandhagen do it this way, so I'm going to give it a try. Or I seen TJ Dillashaw do it this way, so I'm going to try that. So like I pick up a lot of things from a lot of these other fighters that typically I probably wouldn't have ever tried to even implement in my game. Some of it works, and honestly, a lot of it doesn't, because some of it's, it's body type, it's style, it's, physical ability. So it's made it easier for me to look at my opponents as a problem and not so much as a face. Like I didn't really give a shit about Ryan Spann, the person. Obviously I did in the interviews when they asked me about how I think about him. But when it came to like approaching his game, it's very easy just to eliminate the face and worry about the problem in front of me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't, especially like, being you're a light heavyweight and then watching some of the lighter bantamweights and the different moves that they have, because obviously they're agile and trying to change it in. That makes a lot of sense. Now, I wanted to talk, you're somebody who's like persevered so much in your life, and I think there's valuable lessons for everybody, right? So your first fight in the UFC was 2013. You were still very young, but you lost that in immediately, I don't know if you were cut or it was a 1-fight contract. Then you had fought Josh Neer and lost that one, but then you went on a 7-fight win streak to get back to the UFC, which is obviously huge for perseverance. I know a lot of people get there and they take that loss and then you never see them again, or that they've lost the motivation, so they're not able to come back. What was different for you, and how was that first experience? And then to get that call back, how did it feel?
I actually lost the fight right before my UFC debut too. It was the very last Strikeforce event. I fought Hadra Gracie. Honestly, like I had a lot of adversity before that. Like even before I got to the UFC, I'd already had, I think I probably had, I don't know, 8 losses then. So it was, I don't know, man. I just never felt like I wasn't good enough. I never felt like I got beat because I wasn't good enough to do this. I never thought, like, I don't think I've ever been beaten by a person that I just thought was better than me. Some of it's approach, some of it's, circumstance, some of it's preparation. Like in the early days, I wasn't preparing the way that I was supposed to. And the sport was still very young where I live. So it was just evolving, and everywhere else around us was so much further ahead than we were. So I wish I had like some super motivational answer for why I kept pushing forward. I don't know, man. I got like this 24-hour rule. Like I hate losing. I hate it, man. It eats me up inside. But if you let it consume you, you're never going to get past that. So I just, I let it hurt for 24 hours or maybe 48 hours if it's a real bad one. And I just move on. You know what I mean? I just put one foot in front of the other. A lot of people think you need to feel a certain way to be successful or to keep moving forward, or that there has to be this shining moment or this aha moment in your head where you're like, okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to make it. You really don't. That's just being needy. And it's like, when's the right moment to have a baby? Like there's never a right moment. You just got to fucking do it. Yeah. Like you're never ready for another baby. You're never ready for another dog. You're never ready to keep pushing forward. And that's just how it is. So it's not that I had this mindset where like, okay, I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps. I'm going to keep on moving forward because I got this, and this. I'm going to be okay. You just got to keep walking forward. Like it doesn't matter what's going on up here as long as your feet are still moving forward. And that's kind of how my mindset's always been. I don't actually know if I'm going to make it, but as long as I keep taking one step forward and not just letting my wheels spin, I've just always found that works. I always tell all the young guys at the gym, like, nobody cares about you. So just keep moving forward. Like you can cry and your girlfriend's going to rub your back and your mom's going to still love you, but like no one else gives a shit. So you just got to keep walking forward, and no one actually knows if they're going to make it until they make it. So I know from the outside, it seems like these people have it all figured out. And, that's why you see guys so excited when they win titles. It's because they can say whatever they want in the interviews. They can say whatever they want leading up to the fight, but they don't actually know. And I think that's the beauty in this game.
No, I think that you did really 2 good points there. Take your first step, let's say, without, necessarily all the lights being turned on, because that holds a lot of people back, right? That initial fear. And then that 24-hour rule, I think, is very good as well, too, because, people obviously dwell on their problems far too long. I can only imagine, especially coming off a fight, because that's, depending on how you look at it, I mean, that could be a very tragic, it's not the right word, but you know what I mean? A hard thing to handle, losing in front of millions of people. And you got to set some parameters, because if you let that haunt you too long, it's going to affect you potentially in your fights to come, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially at this level, I hate to call it tragic, but it's pretty close. That's how it feels. It feels like real trauma. You know what I mean? And that sounds crazy, but the 24-hour rule also works the other direction. Like, I think that's why I've been able to stay so centered and like I don't let myself get too high either. It's one win. At the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter until you got a gold belt around your waist. So that's where a lot of guys get mixed up. It's really easy to say, I'm not going to get down. I'm not going to feel bad about myself. I'm going to fix the problems that I have, and we're going to keep moving forward. It's really hard to say, I'm not as good as they say I am. I'm not the best. I can be better. Like that. Those are harder conversations to have with yourself, especially, like in my last 3 fights, I got 3 first-round finishes. It'd be really easy if I hadn't been in this game for so long to just feel like I'm on top of the world and, I'm the shit and I'm unbeatable, but like I still make mistakes and I still made mistakes in those fights. And I can't let myself get too up, because then when something does go wrong or doesn't go your way, it's that crazy crash, it's the peaks and valleys, you got to find somewhere in the middle.
No, for sure. And again, I mean, especially in mixed martial arts with organizations like the UFC that put the best against the best. And, everybody, I hate, like, even the ranking systems, as you say, there's a lot of people that don't get credit for it. There's guys that are, ranked 10 to 20 that are incredible fighters, and they have to fight incredible fighters coming up. So with that, because I was kind of relating it to your last one where you had one fight and then left the UFC for a bit. What are your thoughts? I'd always thought maybe, nowadays a 3-fight contract, obviously this is what they typically do, but they have the right to cut somebody. Do you think it would be good for the sport, or something that might be good for the fighters to have a 3-fight contract, but they get that guarantee, whether they're 3-0 or 0-3, they know that if they're able to fight or want to, they have the ability to fight out that first contract. Is that what do you think of that idea?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't. I think I had a 4-fight contract, and I lost the one before, and then when they moved us over from Strikeforce to the UFC, I'm not sure that they wanted me at the time anyways, but that was kind of part of the Strikeforce deal. And Sean Shelby was nice enough to give me an opportunity. So, it's hard to look back and wonder like what it would have been like had I had 2 more to just kind of get my bearings. But I think for these younger up and coming guys, like walking into the UFC on your for your first fight is a very daunting task. It's way different than anything any of these guys have ever done before. It's better now than it was even in 2013, and that's because of the level of the regional shows. So as the level of the regional shows come up, it's a little bit less of a shock factor when you get to the UFC, because it's night and day. Like, it's very evident you're in the big leagues, and I know a lot of these young guys are super uncomfortable. It's even different from that to go into like a main event. So I think, listen, I'm a fighter first type of guy. So I think as many opportunities as we can get these guys, the better it's going to be for everybody. But I can see the UFC side where a lot of times they do bring in these short notice replacements. Maybe necessarily not guys that would have just fought their way into the UFC probably. From a business perspective, I would say tying a lot of these guys to you for long, 3 fights, that's a year. So tying them to you for a year, and if they're not really good enough to be there, then you kind of got a problem where you have a guy that's maybe not good enough to stay safe for an entire year of fights in the UFC, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there. Actually, I didn't think about that. What if he gets, if he can handle it? It's funny you say that too, because you saw, like, really unfortunately on Bare Knuckle Fight, and I'm a fan of what they're trying to do out there. I'm really surprised, but in a good way, that they're actually seem to be doing well. But you see things like that in the incident there, and I always wonder. I'm like, sometimes when you see a big skill level difference, the knockout looks so much worse. And I don't know why that is, but it's almost like the trauma they suffered is like, if they don't have that experience, you know what I'm saying? Like, you see that sometimes on the regionals. So why is that?
So a lot of it's just a technical deficiency. And I know that sounds crazy, that their technique is the reason that the knockout seems so much more brutal. But when you're going through striking training, right, the kind of the first thing you work on is like footwork. So like Mark Montoya, my head coach, is really, really big on foot placement, being balanced. We talk a lot about shock absorbers and being able to absorb damage when you need to. A lot of those guys don't have those skills. So usually the worst knockouts come when you're out of position, when your feet are squared up, when you're flat-footed, you're back on your heels. All those things are mistakes that very amateur level guys make. So it's essentially it's not that, like, it's not a body thing. It's just it's a technical problem where they're never in a good position. So if you take a huge shot from a guy that knows how to sit down on a punch, and a guy that can box, and his foot position is in the right place, and he's in an athletic position, and then he rips an overhand, and you're kind of just willy-nilly with your chin up in the air and your feet are flat, and your legs are straight, like, those are the worst knockouts you're ever going to get.
Yeah, fair. No, that makes sense. I mean, that would be it, getting out of position. But yeah, I've noticed that, and it's very, very cringy. So you make a good point. If they're not quite up to the level, then that makes sense. Now,
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's because then what do you do with those guys? You know what I mean? Like, then you're stuck sticking guys that shouldn't be there with other guys that shouldn't be there, and then here we are back on the regional scene.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Now, before a fight, I mean, I always like to know there's, a few different approaches, I guess, that people have. Everyone's unique, but there's guys like, George St. Pierre who love to train, and then they competed for a living. What goes through your mind as you're in the locker room leading up to the walkout and the fight, and what is your approach to fighting? Do you love the training more? Is it neutral, or how does that look?
I think I've been more comfortable to say this recently. I'm enjoying training camp less and less as I get older. I still love training. I love training. I love everything about the fight game, man. I love the camaraderie with my team. It's just a kind of a good old boys club, like, and girls, obviously we have a lot of females, but it's very tight knit, and I'm very fortunate. Like, I have two teams. So I have my team here in Omaha that I train with, like, in between fights, and then my team at Factory X in Denver, where I do my training camp. So I'm enjoying being away from my family less and less as I get older. So it takes me a couple weeks to kind of get into the training camp groove, where I'm not just kind of, I don't know, frustrated. You know what I mean? I just don't do that well away from my family. So, but I love that whole part of it. But I think it's the competition part. I think it's the fight itself that drives me. Of course, I want to be a world champion. I've been talking about that for 15 years, but I love the actual act of fighting. A lot of guys say they love fighting, but they like winning, and they like the fruits of winning. They like where it's taking them. They like, being the best, or trying to be the best. It's a competitive thing for them. I like the actual act of fighting. I very much enjoy the slipping punches and shit winging by your head, and like, fighting has a smell too. And I know that sounds really weird, but it's like the smell of the octagon is very, very unique. And I've said this before and people think I'm crazy, but like, the smell of blood kind of drives me crazy. I don't know why that is. I just love that part of the game. It's like, in those really chaotic, I don't know, like two cats in a bag fighting kind of atmosphere. That's kind of where I thrive. It's the place that I'm the most comfortable, to be honest with you.
Some people in any sport, there's just different approaches that people have. So no, I understand that. Maybe not the smelling blood, but I'm sure some people can understand that. That's
Well, I think that smell is very much connected to fighting for me. So it's not the actual smell that's like, oh my God, I love blood. I think, like, I smell it and I know exactly what I'm about to do, or I know what's happening. Like, that smell is very much connected to like my favorite thing in the whole world. So to make it sound less creepy, I think that's what it is. I just connect those two things in my brain. So as soon as I smell it, and I smell the octagon and just the whole atmosphere, I know I know I'm about to do my most favorite thing in the world.
Last kind of controversial thing, and I have not asked this before, but like, you're the perfect fighter to ask these questions, because you're just so open, and you do give your views on different fighters in the sports. And I wanted to touch on fighter pay, and it wasn't to go back and forth on who should be getting more and whatnot. It really had to do with the fight bonuses, the 50% fight bonuses that are on the majority of contracts. And I was wondering your perspective. I'd always thought growing up it made sense, because a lot of the fighters, maybe weren't professional athletes when it was starting out, late 90s, early 2000s. It was, everybody had a part-time job. And I could see why it'd be incentivized, like, for people, obviously, not to just show up for a paycheck. I think at this point, we've kind of evolved beyond that. And, you see sometimes, especially with the judging, you feel for some guys when you're like, hey, they should have won that split decision or something, and they lose half their paycheck. Do you think there's a happy median, or do you like the incentives of, like, hey, a 50% win bonus? What are your thoughts on that?
I've never liked it. And just because I don't think I fight any harder to try to get that second half of the money than I would if it was just a flat fee. But I guess I do try to look at things from both sides of it. Definitely early on, I'm sure that it helped. I'm sure that there was that incentive to keep people motivated, so you didn't get people just showing up for a paycheck. When you have the ability to make double what you would have made to just show up, I'm sure that does incentivize people. But I've always thought just a flat rate was kind of the way to go. But at the end of the day, they're a business, and if you can get away with it, I don't know why you wouldn't, I suppose. And that's the part that people miss. And I know I get kind of labeled as a UFC shill sometimes, but I'm just realistic. Like, if you're a business and you can get away, if you can put two people in an octagon, make them fight, and then get away with only paying one of them half their money, like, I don't know why you wouldn't do that as a business. Like if you put your business hat on, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. So honestly, there's no reason to change it right now. To be very transparent, my money's always been super front loaded for the last handful of years. Okay. So my win bonus isn't really that much anyway. So, and no one noticed when my contract changed, and I don't fight, less intense because I already got my money as soon as I step in. So I do think that part of it is kind of a myth.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I said, I'd always seen that, growing up when it was less, or I don't want to even say more amateurish, but when you knew, hey, this might not be this guy's full-time gig.
Right. More amateurish is a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, it's just, the sports evolved so much. And now you see the guys, you got to be a professional athlete to make it there now, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, that was just, I think that's, it makes sense. And like you said, you were able to change your contract. And I'm sure even coming in, you get a win or two, you might be able to have the same discussion where maybe it's, hey, you're not going to get quite as much if you were to win, but your guarantee is a little bit more, right? So I guess it is still kind of open to negotiations if you have some sort of a rapport, right?
I mean, you got to win. You got to win. You got to get to winning kind of solves everything. You got to get to a certain point where you're in a position to start asking for things. But I'm very, very, I don't know. I don't ask for a lot. Like I don't ask for a lot of favors. So when I do ask for something, it's why Dana's never told me no. I'm not one of these guys like I need, there's some of these guys at the top are crazy, man. I need a car service everywhere I go. I need this kind of food all week long. They're just constantly asking for some of the stupidest shit. And none of that stuff matters to me. I'm just a small town kid from Nebraska. My lifestyle's really, really normal, man. Like, people are shocked all the time when they see me, in like locally. They're like, what are you doing over here? Like, I live here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't live in some crazy huge house. I don't drive in Range Rovers or nothing. Like, I don't need anything super fancy. So when I do ask for something, like, the UFC is very aware that that thing is very important to me, because it's not very often that they get any requests. But you got to win and get to a position where you can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, back to the light heavyweight division. I know you're healing an injury for the next 8 weeks, but I'm sure everybody you was happy for Glover to see him finally get that belt after everything he's been through. I know obviously you have history with them. Is that something you think 1-2 fights max, or you get a good contender coming up next that you think you could be challenging or have a rematch for the belt if Glover is still there?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic storyline for sure. I respect Glover so much, man. It genuinely almost brought me to tears watching him win that title, which is crazy to think about, how excited I was to watch someone win something that I want so bad, and to be genuinely excited about it. Like, I was really happy for that guy. He's just that guy. Like, he's everything that you guys would like looking on from the outside. Everything you would imagine Glover Teixeira is, he's that and better. He's just one of the best humans I've ever been in contact with. So, and we still talk. Like, he tagged me on Instagram yesterday wearing one of my t-shirts. Like, he's just a good dude, man. You know what I mean? He's just a good guy. But I think we're both aware that if we both win our next fights, likely we're going to be fighting each other. That's what I would imagine is going to happen.
I think so too. It's funny because even though you lost for some reason, can't really put a finger on it, but it seems like that's a rematch that that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you see if a guy has lost, wasn't recently either, but like, has lost the opponent, you're like, oh, well, maybe he needs another fight instead, right? Because he's fought him before. But for some reason, you're the immediate opponent I thought of. I was like, oh, that bout, right? And so I think a rematch would be a lot of fun. And it's great to hear you say that about Glover as well too, because anybody who knows how he came up and how long it took him to get to the UFC for visa issues or something along those lines it's inspiring. And it's a Michael Bisping story, although Michael Bisping's a different personality. It's a very similar feel to what happened when he won the belt. So
yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of the reason that people are kind of like, I hear a lot of people say, oh, we need to get that Glover rematch. Like, I think a lot of people remember how the first half of that fight went. I'll tiptoe as delicately as I can because I do have a lot of love for Glover. I think it was clear who the better fighter was, just not the better fighter that night, if that makes any sense. Like, his recent wins have made me look really goddamn good because he almost took no damage since then. He beat everyone. He wins the title, and no one was able to take anything from him. I mean, Jan Blachowicz took one hard shot and kind of just looked for the door. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how the fight ended. He got it. Glover took him down, controlled him completely. Second round hits him with a big shot, and Jan was like, "No way, I don't want to do this anymore," and look for the door. Thiago Santos was able to land some big shots, but as soon as they got on the ground, Glover did what Glover does, and just mauled him.
It's interesting you say that about him giving up in the fight because you must have obviously a much more keen eye to that stuff, so you can see when people get hit and they're just kind of fading. We can obviously, I can as fans and as well too, but you must have a different eye for that. I saw him lose. I thought maybe he was looking ahead, but you actually saw him quit in there. You're saying you think?
I think you can actively quit. I think you can quit without saying it in your own head. It was very clear he didn't want to be there. And I don't knock him for that. Listen, I did it for like 5 rounds. That shit was terrible. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. But, at least I was able to, like, no one else has been able to take anything Glover's been dishing out except for me. And no one was able to give it back to him except for me, at least in his last 5 fights or 6 fights or whatever it's been. So, as much trash as kind of everyone talked about me after that fight, I think that there's a lot to take from that. Like, I was able to take 2.5 rounds from him fairly easily until I got caught, and then withstand another almost 2.5 rounds of damage that no one's been able to take up to this point.
Yeah, and walk through it. You were so calm in the corner too. It was crazy. But
it was crazy, man. That was the most chaotic shit I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, no, it was it was great fight to see, but it was good that you healed. I'm glad you came back and you persevered as you always do, right? So it's good to see. Now, but at 33, you just mentioned it, right? Glover's in his 40s now too. You got John Jones moving up to heavyweight now. Says he's still got some years there. How long do you see yourself competing in the sport? Because you're still like, for your resume, you're like, oh, where is this guy? And you see your age, and you're like, oh, well, you could still hypothetically fight, another however long you feel, right?
I definitely don't want to be fighting at Glover's age. That's for sure. In my mind, I got a whole nother life ahead of me after this. And honestly, it's exciting a little bit. Like, I look forward to doing something else at some point in time. I'm very much enjoying what I'm doing right now. Like, I have a whole nother lifetime, like a whole nother career of something else ahead of me after this. It's really motivating. Like, I'm still young enough where I can do whatever I want after this. And now it's just putting myself in a position that, like, I don't ever want to do anything that I have to do. I want to do what I want to do. And that's kind of like what finishing out this part, this chapter of my life and career is like. So I would say I probably got 3 or 4 good years in me before I start slowing down a little bit and some of those miles catch up. And then, we'll reevaluate then and kind of see where we're at. Maybe it takes me a year to get to the title and maybe we run with it for 5 years. Who knows? But, I probably have at least 4 good ones where, before I start slowing down too much.
Yeah. And now do you see yourself staying at light heavyweight? Because obviously you're tall enough to fight at heavyweight, really, right? But obviously you moved up from middleweight. No thoughts in going back down, I'm assuming. And you think maybe in the future would you ever try heavyweight, or is that not even on on the radar right now?
I don't know. Probably not. I'm one of the smaller light heavyweights in the division. So I mean, I'm probably 225 right now, but I've been off since September with this knee injury. So I'm like a fat 225 right now. So, to be super competitive, I mean, those guys are huge. I got a picture. I'll have to post it sometime. Me and Francis Ngannou. It looks like one guy's a heavyweight and one guy's a 55er. Like, he's so big. And it's why it's so amazing that Stipe has been able to do so well. Like, Stipe is the densest human that I've ever been around. He just, like, you grab him and he's just solid, but he only weighs like 230. He's not like, he doesn't weigh that much, but like, even pictures with him and I together, he just looks so much bigger than me, but he's only maybe 10 pounds at any point in time heavier than I am.
Yeah,
like, Stipe can make 205. He could absolutely make 205.
Yeah,
I hope he doesn't hear me say that, because we're buddies. So he can keep his big ass up at heavyweight.
Yeah. He said, I think he said he was putting on some weight as well too, just a little, like, naturally, right?
Yeah,
not trying to force
I think that would help him. I think that would help him a lot. Just to, I don't know, just a little bit of extra mass, I think, in some of those situations, because he already hits so hard. It's the power in that guy's hands is just amazing. But I think him putting on some weight, and because he's already fast, he's already a fantastic boxer, he moves really well. I don't think 10 or 20 pounds on him is going to hurt too much.
No, that makes sense. And again, like, he was catching Francis too. It was a very competitive fight, but just Francis has got this, something in his
what,
hand.
I mean, even with those shots, what if he had 20 pounds of ass, 20 more pounds of ass behind some of those shots? That might change the whole game.
Remember, he caught him with that right before he, and you saw
Francis, and he thought he had him hurt.
Yeah,
he thought he had him hurt, and so he rushed in and ran right onto a hard shot.
So did I. I jumped up and then was one of those. Yeah. No, that was crazy. So I got 3 fighters I wanted to ask you about, and basically just like, off the top of your head, what you think they should do next with their career or fighting. And we'll start off number 1, Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I don't know what that guy should do, to be honest with you. He's kind of a mystery, because he's another guy who can do whatever he wants. If I was Conor, I mean, I can tell you what I think Conor might do, and I can tell you what I would do if I was Conor. But
that'd be great.
if I would guess, I would imagine that Conor's he's gonna get healed up, and he's gonna come back, and he's gonna take the biggest fight possible. And I know he wants to fight for the title. I just don't see that happening. There's no way he just comes out. He's lost 2 out of 3 or whatever it's been. He's 1-4 or 1-3 at 155. It's just hard to justify it at that point. I think it will only take 1 win to get him back. But I would imagine that if Poirier loses to Oliveira, I would imagine that's the fight that he comes back to. If I'm Dustin Poirier, I run that back with Conor McGregor as many times as you can get it. As many times as you can get a Conor McGregor paycheck. For whatever reason, Dustin Poirier lives rent-free in Conor McGregor's head, and he just can't let it go. If I'm Dustin and you lose to Oliveira, you just go ahead and run that Conor McGregor check again. And honestly, I think that at this point, I think Dustin has Conor's number. So that's what I would guess, that if he loses, he fights Dustin. Dustin wins, man, I don't know what he does. The Nate Diaz thing is always there. I think it's a big money fight. And I think he gets 1 win and tries to fight for the title. If I was Conor, I'd probably just hang it up, to be honest with you. Not that it's not because he can't win fights. Conor's still one of the best guys in the world. Maybe he is 1-3 or whatever he is at 55, but it's to the best guys in the world. He's only lost to the best. So he could come in and beat mostly everybody in 2 different weight divisions. I don't know, man. I think it's hard to be hungry when you're full. And I think Conor's been full for a long time. And I understand. I understand some of the things that I see out of Conor, though, because I worry about those same things for myself. Not that I ever think I'd be punching old guys in bars or anything like that, but I do wonder how I'm gonna transition transition to not being a fighter anymore. Like, it's all I've known since I was 17. Fighting has solved every problem I've ever had in my whole life. So I don't know. I do worry about that transition. Like, how is it going to affect me? How am I going to scratch that itch? What am I going to do with my time? And like training is one thing, but that I don't know, that rush of I don't know of just chemicals through your body that happens when you fight. How do you get that somewhere else? And I think that's some of Connor's deal is he doesn't know what to do without it. Because he has everything else in life you could ever ask for. He has all the money. He could buy anything that he ever wanted. He could have, I know he's engaged and he's got a family, but he could have any woman that he wanted. He could, he's got stupid yachts and crazy cars and suits and watches and you know what I mean? Like you can only spend so much money at one point in time. What do you do when the one thing you want you can't have? And you're Conor McGregor. And I think that's part of his ordeal right now. So I do sympathize with him a little bit.
Yeah, and you made a good point. Like to Conor's credit, he's unwilling to fight anybody but the best as well too, right? Like if you're looking at it like from a casual fan perspective, like you're like, oh well, maybe give him some, someone who's not the greatest in the world right now, right? And but he's unwilling to do that, which is again a testament. It's not the traditional boxing route is even if you got a big star and he loses a title fight, okay, let's milk this for a little bit, and that doesn't always work out, and he's unwilling to do that. So no, that's a really good perspective. The second one I wanted was Jon Jones.
He's a weird one right now. I don't know what he's doing. And that's personal stuff aside. I think we're gonna have to wait for all that stuff to shake out now. And kind of see where it goes, but I don't know what he's waiting for. You know what I mean? I don't know what he waited for so long. And maybe I think a lot of it's just a negotiation thing. Like he wants what he wants and he's not going to take a fight until he gets the amount of money that he wants. I think a lot of that's going to change now that he's kind of gotten himself in a little bit of hot water. Typically John gets in trouble and he tries to fight as soon as possible and try to erase that. Again, that's how Jon Jones has fixed every problem he's ever had. He's been, maybe the greatest fighter to ever live. He's always been a fantastic athlete. He's always been a great wrestler. I think anytime John has a problem, he just wants to be great at something else, and hopefully people forget about it. I do wonder what Jon Jones is going to do when he doesn't have the ability to do that anymore. But I also don't think that there's anyone at heavyweight short of Cyril Gane that gives Jon Jones any problems. I think Cyril Gane's probably the guy that could kind of dethrone Jon Jones. I don't know who else could do it.
Very interesting you said that. And and maybe it could be too. I mean, he's definitely
Stipe, and that's Stipe included. And Stipe is a good friend of mine. Love Stipe to death. I think Stipe is at a physical disadvantage with a guy like Jon Jones. I just don't think I think he'd have a really hard time getting to him.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see because John said he wants to be about 265. He wants to weigh right for heavyweight. That's a lot of weight to put on, but he's taken time to do it. So
Jon Jones hasn't been far from 265 several times as a light heavyweight. So that's why I don't understand why he's like, gotta put on all this weight. Like I've seen you as 205 champion every bit at 245. So like he is a large human being. So
what was the event, Metamorphosis or something, where he did a grappling match years ago? Was it Dan Henderson?
Yeah.
And what he weighed something like that for there too. It was like 240.
Yeah, 240 something.
He just walked off the couch, throwing around an Olympic wrestler.
Yeah, straight off the couch, just manhandling Dan Henderson. So I know he keeps talking. Like you got to remember, a lot of these guys when they're talking, they're not talking to the people that actually know. They're talking to the everyday fan that doesn't have any idea. Jon Jones is a mammoth human being. He is big. Look at his brothers. I mean, they're all NFL players. You know what I mean? It's not like they got two NFL superstars that are just huge human beings and then just one skinny Jon Jones. Like, no, he sucked himself down to 205. Which takes, to his credit, it takes a lot of discipline to do that. So, yeah, man, I hate talking really good about Jon Jones, but I can't think of anyone other than Cyril Gane that gives him genuine problems, short of getting caught. I think he beats Francis Ngannou fairly easily. I think it's a 25-minute bore fest, and John leaves without a mark on his face. He's just that guy.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's impressive. I thought the same thing. You see Cyril because he's so he's just probably the most technical heavyweight, right? Nah, Stipe is very technical too. What am I saying? That'd be a great fight though too. Is Cyril and Stipe too?
Well, I think Cyril Gane manages distance better than Jon Jones, and that's the biggest problem with Jon. It technically, if you break down Jon's skills one skill at a time, nothing he does is great. Like he's not that great of a boxer. Like I would beat Jon in a boxing match. I would beat John in a kickboxing match. I would beat John in a jiu-jitsu match. I think wrestling, if we're just doing like a wrestling match, John would probably win that. You know, he's a national champion. He's a good wrestler. But individually, if you break them down, there's nothing special. It's how he puts them together and then manages distance as well. So, you know, he doesn't get hit clean very often. He's, you know, everyone makes a huge deal out of his reach and how long his arms are. His arm reach is literally a non-issue. I had zero issues with John's arm reach. It's everything from the waist down. It's how he manages it with his front kicks and his teeps, and he covers distance so quickly too. And that's typically not forward at you; it's away from you. So he's a very hard puzzle to solve, especially in real time. I never even felt like I was in a fight after I fought John Jones. I just remember it was over, and I was like, "Well, that sucked." Like I felt like nothing really happened there. He's very frustrating. He's very, very frustrating.
No, it's a good perspective, especially for someone who's been in there for 5 rounds with them, right? Like that's
and I think Cyril Gane does those things better. He's a better kickboxer, and I think he's just a bigger, more technical version of John Jones, and he's willing to fight a little bit more than John is. So I don't know, that fight would either be a barn burner or boring as shit, because I don't know who engages first. You know what I mean? And I think Cyril's big enough to defend John's takedowns. His takedowns weren't as good as I expected them to be. I do remember that. I think he shot 10 times. I think I stuffed 8 of them. You know, he's good in the clinch, but John finds a way, and that's what makes him unique. He finds a way and he figures it out in real time.
Yeah, I guess you're going to have Gane over than Ngannou in their match. Is that what you're what you think?
I think so. I just think, again, it's hard to bet against Francis Ngannou, but short of Francis clipping him, I think, you know, and just landing a big shot and putting him down, I don't see kind of how Francis wins this fight. I just don't know how he connects that shot. Cyril Gane is very good at not getting hit. He's defensively sound. His feet are always in the right place. His hands are always in the right place. He moves his head well. He kind of does it all right. You know what I mean? It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's the most efficient for sure.
Yeah, very composed too, and almost treats it like you would think he's going out for a basketball game or something like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem too phased, even when against opponents like Ngannou. But you know, we see
he's not going to be afraid of Francis either. They've trained a bunch together, so I always love these kind of matchups when you know that two guys have trained with each other and they know each other, and it's so fascinating to me because, like, when you looked at Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns, I said the whole time, like, I don't know who's going to win this fight. I think Usman's going to win. But the funnest part for me is that they already know. Like, there's a lot of convincing yourself, and there's a lot of, I can do this, I'm going to change this, and you know what I mean? But, like, I think deep down in his soul, Gilbert Burns already knew who was going to win that fight. And I think Kamaru Usman already knew. Like, it's kind of like, you know, I have training partners. I would never mention any names, but, like, you know, even guys in different weight classes, if we were to ever fight, like, they know and I know who's going to win that fight. Even if we separate and we train other places for 2 years or whatever, and come back, like, we both know who won all those gym fights and who won all those rounds in the gym. I think Ngannou and Gane are very similar to that. Like, you know, we're being analysts out here and we're trying to break it down, you know, with X's and O's and trying to make it black and white. But at the end of the day, both of those guys know who's likely going to win that fight. And that's the funnest shit in the world for me. Like, because I'm trying to figure out who it is. And so you're listening to interviews and you're watching their mannerisms when they're around each other, and you're trying to figure it out, you know, and, like, who's acting different than they typically do, because if, you know, if one guy's acting this way and now he's not anymore, like, maybe he knows something we don't know. Everything that I've drawn from that so far in the couple interactions I've seen with them in the same place, I get the vibe that Francis Ngannou is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I hope you don't mind. I just got 2 more questions. I know we're a couple minutes over. You still got a few minutes?
Yeah, I got a few minutes, man.
Beautiful. Appreciate it. Yeah, and the last one I wanted to bring up is possibly, or definitely the biggest pending free agent after his last fight right now, and that is Nate Diaz. Yeah. There's been a lot of, it's been tough to get him a fight right now, and there's been a lot of talk. So I wanted to get your opinion on that and what you think is. Well,
I think he still has one left. So I think that's a lot of the holdup is just Nate Diaz is not the easiest guy to work with. I don't think that's a secret. Credit to him. He's worried about himself. He's trying to get his own money and put himself in the best position. But when you're not easy to work with, they're also not going to just let you fight one fight and roll out with all the hype and love. You know what I mean? Again, that's business. If you think of yourself like an asset, you're going to make smarter decisions for yourself, which I think is what Nate Diaz is doing right now. So I don't know, man. He's a tough one to figure out because he doesn't move the same way other people move. So I don't see it being Chimaev. I just don't see that one happen. And I know that that's the one the UFC really wants. I have no idea. At least we kind of have an idea what Conor wants to do. I have no idea what Nate wants to do. I know Nate wants to be out of his deal, and it sounds like he wants to get out of his deal and end up in like a Jake Paul fight.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. I don't know who he fights in the UFC to finish it out.
Yeah, and I know, like he was calling initially for Vicente Luque. I know they kind of seemed like they were interested, and that would have been an excellent fight. And then he was calling for Tony Ferguson as well too. Yeah,
I'd like to see that Tony Ferguson fight.
Who wouldn't, right? So
yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah.
I did see the Tony Ferguson thing. I know me and Tony have the same manager, so we're a little bit connected there. Tony's still chasing titles though. Whatever people say about his career and where he's at, physically, technically or whatever, where he's at in that title race, Tony doesn't believe any of it. So Tony's still chasing the title, and I'm not sure if Nate Diaz is on that Tony Ferguson path to a title at 170. But I would love to see that. I think that would be super competitive, really fun, really fantastic build up, because I can't imagine what those two guys would say about each other. I don't know if they would talk shit or not. I would suspect that they probably wouldn't have a whole lot of bad things to say about each other. I think there's probably some mutual respect there between those guys. And they're kind of both, California OGs. Like they run in the same circles. They know the same people. I can't imagine it'd be too much, but goddamn, it'd be a fun fight. It'd just be bananas.
It would, yeah. And Nate's been calling out guys that, for the most part, that he seems to really respect real fighters, like veterans, And you got to respect, because he's not, he's like yourself. He's a small 170 pounder. He's not going in there and he doesn't care. He's fighting Leon, fighting the best, and even Vicente is a very dangerous.
That's a tough fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough fight.
Top contender. So I think Gilbert might be. Is that happening? Gilbert and Chimaev, or?
I hope so. I would give Chimaev, his stock would rise really, really high if he could get over on a guy like Gilbert, because he's not going to be able to just take Gilbert Burns down and be super safe like he is with everyone else. Gilbert Burns is good, man. When I did that quintet grappling event, when I was the coach for it, was the UFC versus Strikeforce versus WEC and Pride. I was, I almost was like in between the matches, I was getting little private sessions from Gilbert Burns. And like, I'm a pretty high level black belt. Like I've beaten a lot of tough guys, just in straight grappling competition. Gilbert Burns is fantastic, man. He's a multiple time world champion. He competes in jiu-jitsu a lot. I just don't see Chimaev kind of running him over on the ground like he does everybody else. And Gilbert Burns is tough in his own right on his feet. So I think that's as fast as they're moving Chimaev. I think that's the natural next progression, because he's kind of just smoking guys right now. So you got to move him along faster.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think Gilbert, like you said, it is, because not only is he's amazing on the ground, but he's one of those guys that in a firefight, like he's going to fight.
Going. Yeah, he's going. I mean?
So it's not when you want to get into a brawl with. And Chimaev, despite his demeanor and everything, is actually he's extremely technical. And I don't know if he's ever he might be too smart to get into but we haven't seen him in a barn fight, because he's got this kick and then straight to takedown that he seems to just land on everybody, and just seems like a very technical fighter. So
yeah, I was hearing horror stories about Khamzat Chimaev. I don't know, man, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. So he trained with Gustafsson forever.
Okay.
So I used to hear, like, when Gus was getting ready for John Jones, he was just getting ragdolled by Chimaev. Like, as a kid, he's been smoking people as a kid. Like, he's been doing this a long time.
Yeah. Did you see his grappling with Jack Hermanson?
Yeah, and Jack's good.
Jack's big too.
Jack's big, and he looked way bigger than Jack, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, he's he's good, man. I think the hype is real. I just want to see him. Now I want to see him really tested. You know, I want to see him in some adversity and see how he responds. I don't doubt that he'll respond just fine. Especially being in that room with Gustafson and Alir Latifi. Like, he's beating up on those guys. Like, let's see him versus a top 70 guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Last two questions for you I like to ask. One is what your favorite cheat meal is. Maybe if you win it, what you're rewarding yourself with after, or I don't know if you do it after your weight cut. And then the second question is what your favorite activity to do is when you're not training or in fights. What's your favorite thing outside of mixed martial arts?
I don't know, man. You know, since I'm not cutting to 85 anymore, I kind of get to do whatever I want anyways. So I try to eat pretty clean, but I've been really, lately I've been really loving these Wagyu steaks. It's like a whole different world that I didn't know anything about until like 6 months ago. I didn't even know what a Wagyu steak was 6 months ago.
No?
No, had no clue. So I've been loving the hell out of those.
Who got you? Wyman? I see Wyman cooking up a lot of steaks quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I've always been I'm a Midwest Nebraska guy. So we're always big steak eaters. But this Wagyu thing, these whole A5 things, it is crazy. It's
like bubble gum.
Yeah, it's the craziest shit I've ever eaten in my whole life. I'm like a big dessert guy too. I like cheesecake. I love summer. I love when my kids are out of school. We travel a lot. So I have I got a big diesel pusher RV, very similar to Cowboys, actually. I got a big, huge, 32-foot enclosed trailer just packed with all of our toys. And so we really enjoy just traveling around the country and finding some some crazy spots to go ride trails. We go to the Black Hills. We've done the outlaw trails in West Virginia. We every once in a while we'll bring the paddle tires and we'll go hit the dunes. So we do a lot as a family. Yeah,
a very active family. Yeah.
And that's why I never fight in the summer.
Okay.
As soon as they're out of school, like we're out, like we're gone. And fortunately my wife doesn't work. So, we're not like tied to her work schedule or anything. So we can just leave. And sometimes we'll just extend it and say, oh, all right, let's go another 2 weeks. We'll just find somewhere else to go. It's a lot of fun. So we ride razors a lot. That's kind of our big thing. And I like to hunt. Honestly, it's just a lot of outdoor stuff, but we hang, my kids, we live in a really fantastic neighborhood. So I would say one of my favorite things is just sitting around with the neighbors and there's probably 20 or 25 kids that are all right around my kids' ages. And just, kind of letting them do their thing. My oldest and second oldest have gotten really into basketball and volleyball. So, being the basketball parents has been a lot of fun and kind of watching them grow into, their own little competitive people, like my oldest is 10. So watching her, before she's always been she's like 5'7". She's 10 years old. She's like 5'7".
I was going to say, they might be, hopefully they're blessed with your height as well too. And volleyball and basketball might work out.
Yeah. She's really tall. So she's always been pretty good at basketball and volleyball, but watching her get super competitive, like, I don't know when kids typically kick in that competitive, like before this point, they've just always had fun playing. Like they don't care about if they win or they lose, or they don't really care. But now she's getting to the point where like you see her watching the scoreboard and like checking her own stats, and she's fighting down low in the paint, and like watching her get pissed off is a lot of fun. Like just being a dad is one of my favorite things in the world, man. Just kind of watching that kind of evolution. We have a newborn too, so we had a 6-week-old baby.
Yeah, congratulations about that, by the way. So
thank you. So yeah, that's kind of what I do outside of fighting, man. It's a lot of family stuff. It's a lot of the broadcasting and working the desk, and got my radio show. So yeah, that's in I think post career, I have fortunately my group of friends and the people that I'm very closest to and spend most of my time with are all super successful for the most part. So it's, we always have a lot of conversations of, business investments and trying to find out what that thing is. I think when it comes, I'll know. But yeah, that's really it, man. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
No, it's cool. And I like the fact you said that too. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The thing I love about athletes, very successful entertainers, especially athletes, though, is that business or anything is just a topic. It's a topic like anything else, right? So the fact that you can be the best and one of the best in the world at this area, unequivocally, you can do it at business. Any successful business person is going to tell you that's actually easier than becoming a professional athlete. You hit 2 for 10, you're in the minor leagues. 3 for 10, you're an all-star, right? So it's a very thin margin, for athletes. So if you can be successful there and put up with the perseverance there, it doesn't take long to transition. It's just a learning curve. And, it's not hard on your joints. So you have more time ahead of you as well too, right? So
yeah, man, I'm looking forward to getting checks without getting punched in the face for them. That's for sure. So yeah, that and that part of it's exciting for me. And kind of just doing my goal has always been to just keep living the same lifestyle I'm living right now for the rest of my life. Like I like being able to just take off for the summer and literally do whatever I want. I can be anywhere at any point in time, and not really tied to anybody else's schedule. So if I can just keep doing that, and again, like I said, like I don't need $100 million. Rich to me is filling up my gas tank and not looking at the price. You know what I mean? That's
right now.
That's rich to me. So with kind of that that requirement in mind, I'm doing a lot better in life than a lot of people are, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Anthony, man, thank you so much. And I appreciate you staying on a bit longer as well too. I was excited for this. I'm glad you got to give your perspective on some things. I'm sure I'm going to have some other questions, and hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. And no worries about the time, man. I always have a lot of fun doing these. So let's stay in touch.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. All right. Have a great day.
Hey, take care, brother.
Take care.